It is 6:17 now, and over the holiday, we marked the 186th anniversary of something that happened in Niagara Falls that you might not know about, but in a lot of ways it not only shaped Western New York history, but also global policies that are still in place today.
Yeah, it was a spectacular event. This morning we look into the Caroline incident in this week's Unknown Story of Western New York.
When we talk about the Patriot Wars, I think that's the defining moment, if you will, between the British, Canadian forces and the Americans.
The Patriot Wars wasn't a conflict between nations, but rather a series of rebellions in 1837 and 1838 against the British rule of Canada.
It really does shape our entire world, the aftermath of it.
And that, according to historian Lindsay Loren-Visser, is because of one specific incident.
The rebels got a boat, and that changed everything.
That boat was named the Caroline, a steamship that was used to shuttle supporters, including many Americans, across the river to a rebel encampment on Navy Island, which its leader, William Mackenzie, named the Republic of Canada.
The British decide, all right, this is a threat, it needs to be taken out immediately.
And they did so in spectacular fashion.
The British secured the vessel, they cut it loose, set it on fire, and pushed it out to sea, and it crested the falls in a flaming blaze of glory before ultimately being destroyed by the Niagara River.
During the skirmish to take control of Caroline on the U.S. side of Navy Island, one person, Amos Durfee of Buffalo, was killed.
So essentially, you now have a situation in which an American civilian was killed on an American ship in American waters by a country that we were not at war with.
This event caused a diplomatic nightmare between Britain and the U.S. Many Americans called it an act of war. The British called it an act of preemptive self-defense. That debate raged on for 5 years through a variety of diplomats and 3 presidential administrations, to the point where the two countries were on the brink of war. That is when the right pair of diplomats came into the picture, Daniel Webster on the U.S. side and Lord Ashburton for the British.
All right, if you're going to claim this as self-defense, this is how we would view self-defense. It has to be absolutely immediate, overwhelming, a threat that left no alternative for any other course of action. And the action pursued must be proportional to the threat.
It was a deal struck with such genius that its international impacts are still in play today.
Because it became such a good definition that it came to define most of the 19th and 20th centuries, and then ultimately became codified in the United Nations Charter in Article 51. So now any country that wants to go to war based on a threat that has not actually materialized yet has to use the Caroline principles in order to be able to do so. It's funny because it's this kind of little insignificant event that happens on the Great Lakes, but it goes on to have huge consequences internationally.
Yeah, and the Caroline test was discussed to justify the threat of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, also in the Nuremberg Tribunal, judging Germany's invasion of Norway and Denmark during World War II. So these things that happened, a flaming ship going over the falls,
Nearly 200 years ago.
it still has impacts today.
Fascinating.
Yeah, crazy.
6:20 on Daybreak.